Okay, we'd like to call to order the Town of Niskuna Planning Board and Zoning Commission, May 5th, 2025 meeting. Ms. Bergami, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Here.
Mr. Khan,
Here.
Ms. Belofsky,
Here.
Ms. Gomes,
Here.
Ms. Gold,
Present.
Mr. Bill and Calhoun,
Here.
Chairman Darpino.
Here. We do not have any approval of any minutes, so we will move on to public hearings. The first public hearing that's up is 2690 Balltown Road, an application for a new guardhouse and a new patio at GE Vernova. Excuse me. Ms. Bergami, could you please read the public hearing?
Sure. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the Code of the Town of Niskuna, New York, and the applicable provisions of the Town Law of the State of New York. A public hearing will be held by the Planning Board and Zoning Commission of the Town of Niskuna in the Town Board Meeting Room at 1 Niskuna Circle on the 5th day of May, 2025 at 7 p.m. to consider an application for Mr. Matt Savoy, agent for GE Vernova at 2690 Balltown Road, for construction of a new guardhouse building and amenity space in the town of Niskuna. Tax parcel ID number 40.00-1-45.31. The property is located within the IR Research and Development Zoning District. A copy of the application for site plan review will be available for inspection at the Planning Department in the Niskuna Town Hall and can be viewed at the town website under the Public Hearings tab and will be shown electronically during the public hearing. If you wish to express an opinion regarding the public hearing, you may do so at the above-mentioned time and place. If you cannot be present, you may request a virtual login to the meeting by emailing lrobertson@niskuna.org or calling 518-386-4531, or you may set forth your opinion in a letter which will be made part of the permanent record. Please note there is a 5-minute time limit for each speaker at the public hearing, and submitted letters will not be read out loud at the public hearing, but such letters will be included in the minutes and added to the record. The Planning Board and Zoning Commission of the Town of Niskuna will hear all persons interested during the aforementioned public hearing. By order of the Planning Board of the Town of Niskuna, New York, David Darpino, Chairman, Planning Board and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Bergami. Okay, the public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak about this project and this project only, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay, it appears that nobody present here is going to speak for the public hearing. Do we have anyone online, Laura?
No, and we didn't
Okay.
receive any written. Oops.
No, and we didn't receive any written comments either.
Okay, all right. So last call for the public hearing. All right, seeing as there is none, we will close the public hearing and move on to privilege of the floor. Privilege of the floor is now open to any town resident of Niskuna wishing to speak on any planning or zoning matter. Please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. Okay, it appears that we don't have anyone present for privilege of the floor. Do we have anyone online?
No, nope. Just
Okay.
Alex and Clark.
Okay. And was there any correspondence on any open items sent to the town?
No.
Okay. So seeing as no one is present for privilege of the floor, we'll close privilege of the floor and move on. We have no unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. First up is Resolution 2025-12, a resolution for site plan approval for tenant change to Katrina's Mexican Grill at 2305 Knott Street East. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan meets the requirements of the zoning code and the previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves the site plan as described in the above resolution with the following conditions. 1, code compliant signage for the property shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. Any waivers or variations of code on proposed signage shall require a full planning board review at a future date. I will move that we move resolution 2025-12 for adoption. May I get a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Do we have a representative from the applicant here?
Everybody. I Hey, welcome to Oscar again.
Okay. So you had a chance to read and hear the resolution. Are you okay with the condition on the signage?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like the package is the same as we saw the previous meeting. It's a pretty straight tenant change, a little bit of minor updating on the inside, but pretty much the same floor plan.
Yes.
Patio will still be used as
Yes.
its current configuration.
Mhm.
And I don't think that there's any other updates or changes from the last
Um,
meeting.
Just that in our discussion, the Complete Streets had those recommendations for that part of the plaza,
Mhm.
but we thought we can package them up and send them to the landlord maybe separately. But
Right.
Complete Streets identified 2 places where the crosswalk needs to be striped, 1 place where there definitely should be concrete, and they wanted to open a larger discussion on that like little dirt path that goes through the trees because kids use it all the time, and I guess it's not plowed or maintained in the winter.
Yeah, some of those larger scale things that relate to the bigger parcel of the plaza, we'll talk with the landlord, but since this
Okay.
is a pretty straightforward tenant change, there isn't a lot of updating on the outside. We didn't think it was appropriate to have the applicant be responsible for that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Good. Open it up to discussion. Okay. All right. Seeing as none, Ms. Bergami, could you please call the roll?
Okay.
Mr. Laflamme?
Aye.
Mr. Khan?
Aye.
Ms. Belowski?
Aye.
Ms. Gomes?
Aye.
Ms. Gold?
Aye.
Mr. Bill and Calhoun?
Aye.
Chairman Darpino?
Aye, resolution passes. Well,
Okay.
Welcome to Niskuna. I mean,
All right, thank you
much
so much.
success for your business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next is a recommendation to the ZBA for 2690 Balltown Road, GE Vernova. Recommendation to the ZBA for new signage requiring an area variance. I will be recusing myself on this one, and Ms. Belowski will be taking the lead.
Thanks. So, Mr. Savoy, can you and Mr. Warner come to the podium for us? So at our last meeting, we talked about the freestanding monument sign and then the 6 additional wall signs. And I believe the board asked that you could show us what you're proposing on building 1 and then show us kind of a side-by-side of what that would look like if you kept it within the 150 square foot allowance that the zone permits.
Right.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, it's hard.
The other one you can see better.
Okay.
This one you can.
That one's better. And can you just kind of review for us this one in particular, why that size was chosen, and then just walk us through the additional 6? I know you did it before, but because we're considering this for variance, I
Yep.
just want to make sure we're on the record again.
The biggest change you guys are going to see, we switched these signs to white. They were black. Once we rendered them and realized how dark the building was, GE decided to switch these to white, so they're actually a little more visible. This sign, the building is just massive. If you've been in there, it's huge. So we picked a size that fit the building and was visible from a decent distance down the road. Really, you're already through the turns and at the building when you can read this sign. Any smaller, and I don't think you'd be able to read it at all while you're driving in. So again, we're going for readability so people can see what this is. And we're not looking for visibility for Balltown Road. We're looking for visibility when you're at the building.
And can you just explain with the switch to white, does that change the interior illumination at all, or?
Nothing at all changes except for it's an aluminum can. So instead of being painted black, it's painted white. Same distance off the wall, same LEDs, same glow. All that's changing is the paint color.
Any questions from the board? Because it's just one sign that's permitted and we're talking about 6, can you just review for us, for everybody here, the additional signage that's being requested and why?
So we have the monument sign, which is out on
Which is
Balltown Road.
fine. Yep.
So you can obviously see where to turn in off of Balltown.
And that's just refacing the existing.
Correct.
correct.
Refacing what's there.
Mhm.
We've got the guard shack sign. just so you know, this is GE Vernova's guard shack. I went on the way in. We've got,
And if I recall, the guard check is there, Matt, because you can tie into power that's existing, right? That was part of the decision to put it there.
Yeah. The illustration shows it, but that's right where the high air comes out.
Yep.
There's already underground.
Okay.
utilities there.
Is that one going to
then
be
we have the
white?
Welcome Center, which is as you're facing the big building to the left.
It's a
There's
good
a sign on the
question.
front and a sign on the back. Just says GE Vernova. And then there's also going to be the naming sign. Again, we don't know exactly what the name will be, so we just have a filler for now on the building, so that again, a building could be named, could be after somebody that did something significant at GE or whatever it turns out to be. And again, with the scale of this building being so massive, these signs are honestly going to look pretty small.
Even in these existing configurations?
Sure. Yep.
Mhm. Any questions? Is the guard check going to stay black on the wood, or will that also switch to white? To be consistent.
I believe that's also switching to white.
Mhm.
Not positive on that because we haven't actually seen this wood.
Okay.
The paint color at night, you won't notice any difference because it's going to look dark with a glow around it. It's only during the day you see the white or the black.
Any questions from the board?
Tom, this is Clark. Laura and I did have a little bit of a question when we looked at the first sign. Sarah, if you could show that.
The
Are you
monument?
sure those are to scale? Because one is supposed to be 50 square feet and one is 290.
And they don't look that different.
They just don't look.
I mean, there's good as we could get them to scale off a picture. Honestly, it's close, probably.
Okay.
The one on the right
It
might be
seemed-
a little big.
It seemed like the 50 square foot one would look even smaller.
Smaller.
It probably would, honestly. It could be a little big there. Again, we're just going off of a picture, so it's tough to get this exactly scaled. We had to take the rendering and overlay the picture and try to line it up and get it as good as we could get it on the screen.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Clark. Okay, so we need to vote as a group on whether this affects the comprehensive plan. That's our first area to look at. And I think based on the uniqueness of this particular campus, it's standalone. As we talked about, they're not trying to make the signage visible from Balltown. It's really about once people arrive on the campus, you cannot see signage from the road or any nearby neighborhoods. It fits within the usage of the IR Research and Development Zoning District. And we talk about in the plan expansion of existing research and development sites to further solidify that area as an economic stronghold in the community. And, I think overall, looking at those three factors, there's no negative effect on the comprehensive plan. Does anyone have any comment related to that? Okay, so we can just do a simple all in favor, yay and nay for this, correct? Okay, so all in favor of voting that this does not have a negative effect on the comprehensive plan, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Great. Second area is suitability of use. So the primary function of the signing, as we talked about, is wayfinding and building identification. While there are some significant variances needed, I think the applicant has demonstrated that both the size and number of signs requested is reasonable. If you've been on the campus, it's large. The building being constructed is mammoth. And there's really a mixed use in terms of what's happening inside some of the production facilities versus, the greeting and the visitor area where you're bringing guests in. The requests are large, but I would say not outrageous given the size of the buildings. And I think they're to the correct scale for the use on each of them. And as I said, the function of this campus, a big function of the campus, is to bring guests in to showcase new technology, to discuss with potential customers the technology that's available. So I do think from both a wayfinding and safety standpoint, to have easy to read identification on each of the buildings makes sense. Any concerns or objections?
No, and I think I just want to add that, the one major sign that's actually quote unquote facing the public,
Mhm.
right? That is a conforming sign, the monument sign at the beginning of the property,
Correct.
right? And so I think the considerations of internal to the property, large size of the buildings, multi-use of the buildings and locations on the campus, I think warrant, the variances, both in terms of size and count.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll do another vote. All in favor of recommending the variances for suitability of use, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So last is just with that, the recommendation to the zoning board that they approve the variances overall, given the unique circumstances of the parcel, its location and setback from the road, the fact that it's really a contained campus that's not visible to the public or from the road, that the package is striking the right balance of form and function, and that it is being designed to safely navigate guests, especially people who've not been on the campus before. I'd move that we recommend the variances to the zoning board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
so that's been approved. This is the first time I've done this, so remind me, is that it? Or is there something else that
That's
needs
it.
to happen?
That's it.
Excellent.
That's it. Excellent job. Thank you.
Good luck with the ZBA.
Can't wait to see them.
Okay. So that's the last item on new business. Moving on to discussion items. Right back to 2690 Balltown Road, GE Vernova. This is the application for a new guardhouse and new patio. Project leads are Ms. Belowski and myself. So since the last meeting, we did call for the public hearing, which we had tonight. There was no feedback on that. And the other items is that the TDE letter did go out. If you want to come back up or.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review the TDE letter?
Yes, we did with our
Okay.
consultants as well.
Okay. Any concerns? There were just a few handful open items on there.
Yeah, overall, it looked like submittal should handle most of it, and there was one comment we were working through as well with this SWIP stuff, I think. So overall, shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. There were a couple landscaping, some lighting questions that were on there. The packet that we've seen and we've continually been seeing is quite an advanced package with the amount of detailing and work that's been done on there. So that was good too. Any discussion items on the TDE letter from any of the board members? I had none further. And then the other item that has transpired since then is the Complete Streets Committee meeting did meet. They had a couple suggestions about adding bike racks or a bike path connection for the employees. I know that's something that's in your bigger picture as you're working through this. And then maybe a future sidewalk or multi-use path along Balltown Road. So a path to Balltown Road internally may be something that would be good for walkability.
Yep.
I don't know how much it would invite people, but a walking path or some sort of designated path on Balltown Road is a little bit challenging just because of the setbacks, the state road classification. As much as we would love to see some sort of overhaul to that road, probably highly unlikely, but anything that you did internally obviously would be good for walking paths or whatever you see. The head count probably will be increasing in the future there. So that would be great if anything was added at some point.
Yep. So I can comment on a couple of those. If that's all right.
Okay.
Had the bike conversation super early on in the discussion. Actually, building 600 right next to on the same property there has bike racks even inside the building, especially for people that are looking to charge. And actually, that's actually where there's a locker room. So there's showers there.
Okay.
So we actually purposely decided not to put bike racks at the existing structures, trying to push people to 600 where there's actually facilities where if you did bike in would make sense to freshen up. So that one we actually did think through. We actually thought through the road down to all the way to Balltown. We got a ROM on it, not that cheap. It's quite a far road. I think we said the guardhouse is 1,700 plus feet in. With the current, I'll say staffing anticipation, right? In this current configuration, it didn't warrant spending that kind of dollars on that, but it is something we've kind of kept out there. I'll say for like a master plan type thought, right? Was if you are going to build the campus out, like we could see in maybe the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe even sooner, that could be something that would make sense.
So is it an easy connection to the existing bike path behind you?
There's one point on the campus. You can actually see the bike path there. Yep, exactly. That's the closest spot, pretty much exactly where the arrow is pointing. There's a little lift station there. The reason why right now we're not looking to connect the two is we don't have any kind of secure perimeter on the site, right? So there's no full site fence. So we kind of don't want to invite it necessarily. Obviously, can't control what people decide to do on their own. But for now, without any kind of a secured perimeter around that property, trying to keep it a little isolated. We do have the advantage of a lot of the severe slopes on the backside of the property that kind of, as you traverse the bike path to the page north here, it kind of takes a dip down there, right? So we've got a bit of a natural, say, security barrier a little bit on the property. But that spot in particular, it's not that far of a jaunt. So we've certainly talked about it, but probably be at a point, if we were looking to fence the entire property, we might look to add that.
One of the other things we want to talk about is that there is a CAC meeting that is scheduled, and given where we are with this, we've had the public hearing, and we've gotten some really good feedback from some of the other committees. The timing of this won't allow for the CAC to get their full comments to us if we were to call for a resolution at the next meeting, correct, Laura?
Yeah,
Okay.
but they did have a pretty robust discussion on it, and I was just doing their minutes for the last meeting. They didn't identify any major concerns. They were just basically waiting for the engineering letter to make sure that the stormwater was being addressed. So I don't anticipate an issue with the CAC recommendation. If you guys had identified a particular environmental concern for them to look at, they could look at it. But I think it would be okay to do a tentative.
Okay. So our intention would be to call for a tentative resolution for the May 19th meeting to keep you moving along, as
Okay.
opposed to just waiting for another committee that's already seen this once. They've had a chance to respond to it. And we didn't have any large-scale takeaways from that. And given the TDE letter was pretty brief and had some, very specific responses to drafting details, I think we're in a good position.
Okay.
And then we also have a tree council meeting on Thursday. So that we'll have comments from the CAC and the tree council by the 19th.
Right.
Oh, go ahead, Clark. Sorry.
I just wanted to add that the applicant's engineer has responded today to the first TDE comment letter. So just wanted to thank Matt for keeping everyone turning things around so quickly. So
Yes,
I
sir.
think we'll get the TDE review wrapped up pretty quickly.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Clark.
All right. Good. So I think we'll put it on for the May 19th for a resolution for site plan approval.
All right, very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 2331 Troy Schenectady Road, the Heritage Group, a site plan application for a new monument sign. I will be recusing myself on this one, and Mr. Khan will chair this application. Thank you.
All right, folks. And I think we all, we'll hear again from the representative from AJ Sign. And, the main characteristics of this feature is that there's a variance for the use of this building, this property, as a professional building. And because of that, it falls into the category in our code, 220 section 10 as a legal non-conforming use. And section 220-22 allows a legal non-conforming use to have a 20 square foot sign with some other conditions as read out. So currently there are three variances that would be under request here, and you can get into the variances and we can have a discussion on them.
I'm Tom with AJ Signs. So basically, we're looking to replace the existing sign with this sign, which is actually the same size as what's there now. And from what I saw in the meeting agenda, it's smaller than what was there before this, before the before the last sign. So we're going down in size as we go on here. This sign, the way it's built, it's aluminum with acrylic push-through letters, black opaque faces. So you're going to get a little soft glow around the edge of the letter, and that's it. So it's a very soft lit sign. It is on Troy Schenectady Road. It's a busy road. We want to make sure we're visible. We can be seen. People know where the business is. So we do feel that the size is necessary as a wayfinding aid more than anything. The sign that's there now works well in this size. So we feel that this is a successful size, and we want to keep that. That's the existing.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The previous sign, I think it's taken off. It's removed from the property right now.
Yeah, the one that was actually quite a bit bigger, I think it was Prudential Insurance,
Right,
is gone.
it's gone. Yeah, but that's been gone for a while, and then the most,
Yeah, the Berkshire Hathaway. Oh, I actually think the Berkshire Hathaway one still out there?
I drove by this morning, I didn't see it, but I don't think I missed it. But,
It's probably gone.
I think it's gone.
Yeah,
I think it's
because
gone. I'm
I
fairly
would think
certain
that
it's gone.
Berkshire Hathaway, just because of the way that companies run, would probably want it removed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly certain it's gone.
Yeah.
It's, part of it is just,
Because it made me look at the building and realize
Yeah.
it was vacant. Yep.
yeah. So this sign was a 24 square foot sign, the
Mhm.
one we're currently looking at, right? And you're coming in at the same,
Exactly. Yep.
right?
Oh.
Go ahead, no.
The only difference really, because I was kind of like, why do they look so different? Is if you look at the measurements, this sign is actually measured all the way down to the bottom.
But-
So where it says Blake Realtors, that's the 24 square
Yeah.
feet on this sign. Whereas this, the one that they're proposing,
It's
is
24
this
just on
is
the top.
20 So
Yep.
it's sort of like it
Good,
changed.
good. I was going to bring it up
Yeah.
because, so the 24 square foot, number one, it's raised further up from the ground, and that also means you need a from the ground variance,
Exactly.
right? For, for the bottom part. So look, I'll say something, I'll pause. It'll be completely consistent with what I've said before. You'll expect it, right? What does a compliance sign look like to the 20 square foot with no, with being in close
I have
proximity to the ground, and also, not backlit? Because this one,
Will you pass these out to you guys?
it's up to you, Laura, in terms of making the package and all that stuff.
The
But
chairman.
well, I'm acting now, so I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah. No, that's completely up to you, Jengus.
Yeah, okay, please, go ahead. I mean, under normal circumstances, we could be a little bit of a stickler and have you get that in before the package is due. But this time, let's just quickly take a look at it, since it's answering a direct question that we asked. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
That shows the compliance sign on the right.
Option B.
Yeah, the one on the right-hand side would be compliant. So it's compliant in the square footage, the 40 by 72, that's 20, and the 24 inches off the ground.
The 24 inch off the ground. I mean, our issue with that is typically snow. If we get snowbanks along the road, you're going to be up into the sign a little bit. So we like to keep this up. And again, it's such a busy, wide, big road. We really feel we need the height and the square footage to just be visible.
Let's talk about the lighting for a minute. So, our code says our sign should not be internally lit, but you are proposing a backlit
Correct.
sign.
It's push through. So you have an aluminum face, and then all the letters are cut out with a CNC machine, and then acrylic is pushed through those letters. Then it's got an opaque black vinyl on the face, so the light can only come out that acrylic, the side. So you got about a half an inch of acrylic on the side of the letters where light can come out. So it's much less light than if you were to do floodlights. Floodlights, you tend to, if they get hit or off kilter, they're aiming in the road or in the sky. They're not, not real night sky friendly. Whereas this is just LED lit, so it's at a short throw and it just comes out. It's got to make its way out through that piece of acrylic. It's 3/4 inch thick acrylic pushed through about a 1/2 inch. So you just get a very little bit around the edge. So it's the softest way to light a sign.
And is that lighting ever going to be turned off in a 24-hour period, or?
It can be, we could have it shut off at midnight if we needed to, or, I mean, typically we put them on a photo cell and they go on when it gets dark and off when it gets light.
Yeah. I mean, I buy the argument on the lighting being less harsh than the externally lit. And maybe that's a code thing, but we're here, we don't.
And
need
no,
that.
we actually have problems. I mean, I think maybe when we look at our zoning code again, we should put that on the list because the floodlights, they do confuse oncoming traffic, like on Hillside Ave and stuff. We do get complaints sometimes if they get shifted or something happens to them.
And on that particular road,
The less confusing lights we have, the better.
it's a high-speed road.
Mhm.
It's not supposed to be a high-speed road.
But it is.
It's a higher speed road than Hillside, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is higher than Hillside. Yeah.
Yeah. Aesthetically, I like option B much better, but I can see the logic behind option A between the snow, the fact that some of the vehicles on the road now are up higher.
Sure.
It's a good point.
Option A does make sense.
It's a good point.
I mean, the overall height of the Berkshire Hathaway sign was, what was that, Laura? Do you have
I
it
think it's similar, actually.
handy?
Oops, I think I might have-
It looks like it's probably close to 6 feet, maybe a little less.
The overall height of that was 6 feet. So
6 feet?
Yeah.
what is that? 72
72
inches.
inches.
Yeah, is that
72
the same?
Same
Yeah.
as the
Sorry.
conforming.
Got it, yeah. Okay. So I think we're at the same height with option A, right? No, option A is much
Option B
larger.
is the
It's option
same.
B. Yeah, option B was at the same height as
Oh,
Berkshire
yeah.
Hathaway. Yep, option B.
A is a little higher.
Yeah, A is a little higher.
Oh, I'm sorry, the height.
Yeah, A is at 86. Yeah, I'm talking about the height from the ground.
86 inches versus 72 inches. So
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's-
actually option, let's get it straight. Option B is a little bit shorter total signage,
That's
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Option B comes in at 64,
So
which is,
Berkshire
you know,
must have been
6
a little
inches.
higher than
yeah.
standard.
yeah, so
That's how they were probably dealing with the snow
op-
issue.
Option A is a foot taller
Yeah,
than what was there. Option B is a foot shorter than what was there.
yeah.
86 versus 64.
right, yeah. So that's what he's saying. This one's a foot taller.
Right.
But you're really just taking that at the bottom and giving yourself 12
Right.
more inches at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one option could have been, we take option B and we raise it by 6 inches. It'll get you to the original 72 that was there. Right? That addresses a little bit the snow issue, the height
It
issue.
would, yeah.
Yeah.
By
And I-
8 inches. You can raise it by 8 inches, right? Or am I getting that wrong?
I think 6 inches, right? I'm see 8 inches. That's right. Yes, 8 inches. Sorry. 8 inches.
Yeah.
8 inches. 72. Yeah.
It's not much room for plantings though. If you want to do bushes or anything like that, we'd try to, again, be out of the bushes, out of the grass, We like a little height off the ground. And again, like she pointed out, when you're driving, you look straight ahead, you don't want to look down, you want to look straight into the sign.
So you have a plan on option A that you're proposing to actually put some kind of planting around the bottom?
I don't know for sure, but if the customer wanted to, you need to have the height to be able to.
I mean, that could be something that we could, I'm looking back at the Berkshire Hathaway sign, right? There was some sparse planting
Mhm.
there. Right?
Didn't do very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, probably 18 to 24 inches of bushes there at least. And looks like they haven't really grown yet.
The one thing that Berkshire Hathaway has in regards to being easier to spot is that contrasting in color. So I think with this sign, I don't necessarily see that. Like I know that it was like a burgundy, like I could tell that what that company was. I am in favor of the larger sign just because if you account for the snowbank, you can still see the number
Mhm.
also, which is also a safety thing. And also it doesn't cause cars to have to come up on it so close and have to slow down. I think you can see that from further away specifically on that road. So that would be the reason I would be in favor of A.
I agree. I think it sort of exists on its own on that parcel too. It's not like we've got 6 in a row on Balltown and suddenly we've got this one that's a foot taller that's kind of jutting up and out of line. Given the location on Balltown or on Route 7 and the speed that people do travel, I agree. I think the higher sign is actually better and I think Leslie's point about people driving higher cars is also a good one. I think given the circumstances of the parcel, the request is not unreasonable.
So this would actually be, these would be planning board. We can actually grant these, or right? No, we have to go take them to the zoning
Board
board.
of Zoning.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't, so where's
Just for the height or for the square foot?
all
I
three?
was-
All three.
Yeah,
I was just going to clarify, I'm more so referring to the height. If the actual sign here, the 72 inches, the preference, that to me can remain, but it's the height that I'm referring
Yeah.
to.
so
Mm.
I'm very similar to Ms. Gomes. I think we can, I can see personally being okay with the height. Did you have an option A?
But it becomes a scale
It becomes a
question.
scale question,
Yeah.
right? It becomes a scale question.
So it might make sense.
Yeah.
Based on what I'm hearing, I'm kind of agreeing with the consensus that the scale would merit
Right.
change if we're going to go with this slightly higher sign, and the number being a little bit more visible was what I was thinking earlier, and I think that was well said. So, and also I believe there's a gas station on the other side. And just from a balancing perspective, I think it would be good to have a sign that's better visible and a little taller.
Tom, is the base that where the 2331, I don't see the measurement. Is that the same? You're keeping
Width.
that base the same? Like the width
The
of,
width is the same, yep.
the
All we-
width of the
all we
base
changed
is
was
the
height.
same?
Yep.
The width is the same as the previous sign that's there, right?
No, not that. The width of A and B is the same.
The width, yeah,
The
so
bottom one.
let me get back to the drawing there.
And how does that compare to the Berkshire Hathaway?
So Berkshire Hathaway actually was 4 foot width, uniform all the way. So why wouldn't you have opted for something like Berkshire Hathaway sign? It actually looks pretty stately.
Well, this guy wanted this. I mean, this fits better with the insurance risk management benefits. If we just put the Heritage Group up there, nobody has a clue what they do.
Yeah, I
Right.
understand you're going wider for the.
Berkshire Hathaway is a brand.
Yeah.
People know what they do, whereas this, we really need to tell people what.
And
they
they
do.
currently have a location further up the street, right, in Latham?
Not positive.
Yep,
Okay.
set back behind Wendy's and
Yeah.
Novo. I actually think the Berkshire Hathaway, because it is recognizable, you can get away with that. I actually find that the wording small.
Yeah.
That's a small sign for that much language.
I mean, they have real estate signs all over the place, so people
Yeah.
start to know and learn that
Mhm.
brand, whereas this isn't a brand that people are going to know. So again, the bigger size helps us with the insurance risk management benefits being a little more readable. You don't want a sign to be an eye test. You don't want people to be driving by squinting, trying to see it, looking off the road longer than they need to. You want to have them read it while they're driving, not reading it instead of driving.
Yeah.
So we try to be conscious of that when we design things.
All right. So thank you for sharing option B. Right, I think clearly I do think that you need some more height based on the reasons cited. Okay. I think if we did option B, 8 inches higher to make it match what Berkshire Hathaway's height is, the scale's gonna look a little strange. And that being said, for option A in front of us, let me just do a quick review of the board here. So we have 3 variances. I guess I'll do them in reverse. It's on page 2 of the narrative, right? Internal lighting versus the floodlights. I would think that for the reasons described, for everything else mentioned, we could be okay with the internal lighting. It might be a degree better than having floodlights.
I also think it's real estate is 24/7, 7
Right.
days a week. This is a much more traditional business hour. So I
Yeah.
think I agree with you.
All right. Then we'll just go and keep doing reverse order. In terms of height of the sign. So currently, they would have been allowed 24, they're at 42. What do folks think? I think
For the base?
for the base, yeah, from the height of the base, the height off the ground.
Yep. I think that's a good fit.
Okay,
Agreed.
yep. Alex, you can chime in here too if you like, please. I mean, not-
Yeah, no, I honestly, I agree with everything that's been said
Okay.
so far. That's why I've been quiet.
All right.
Sorry.
And then I think then the remaining one, which is actually the square footage of the main sign area, I understand why it needs to go wider to get a little bit more description in there. It does make it a wordy sign. And, I think having a sign of that height on the base, put the, with the smaller compliant, 20 square foot, it's gonna look odd. So given it's a busy road, right, given that we do like people to be able to visibly see what they're doing all seasons of the year.
Yeah.
So I guess the next step would be we can
So if
do this now, or we can put it on the agenda for next time. I don't see a reason why we couldn't do it now.
you could do it now, I don't think we'll be able to squeeze this one on the May meeting because we haven't done a denial yet. So it'll probably have to be on the monumental June meeting. But you guys. could
So
do
should
it.
we, procedure-wise, should we wait until you issue that denial and then I don't want to set a precedent that's not.
I think it would be better if we brought the recommendation back once the denial is finalized.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So thanks for telling me where you are in the process. I agree with that. So I think in general, from the discussion here today, the board sees that it can recommend to the ZBA that these variances, be granted for the reasons we cited. Protocol wise, I think we want to stick and not create a new precedence by having a formal vote taken on that prior to the denial letter and having it prior to the denial letter, right? I can end the sentence there. Laura, agreed?
And yes, and also Tom, could you email this to us so we could put it in the packet
That's
for
right.
next time? For the
That's
vote?
the other-
Chris and send
Yeah.
it.
Thanks for bringing it up. I was going to bring it up too. The other
Oh.
part was, look, we accepted this today because we asked the question. You had it ready. Thank you very much. We would like to get it in before that. And what would be good actually is, if you don't mind, since you're going to do that and you know where we're parked, I don't expect anything to change. Could you actually put it on the rendering,
Yeah,
the compliant sign?
the A and B.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, A and B. So that's not unreasonable, right?
No,
Okay.
takes 5 minutes. It's easy.
Folks, we're good?
We're good.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom.
All right.
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
All right, I'll hand back to Chairman DiRapino. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Khan. All right, next up is 3418 Albany Street and 191 Fillmore Ave, an application for a lot line adjustment. I am the project lead. Get to that here. So since the last meeting, went to zoning, they did approve the 4 requests for the lot line adjustment, and it was approved. So I think that at this point, we are ready to call for a resolution for the next meeting for the approval of the lot line adjustment. So,
Sounds good.
okay, good. I think the applicant will be happy with that, and that'll clean up that one.
Yeah, no.
So
that's
at
a-
our
that's
next
a good-
meeting.
So at the next meeting, we'll call for resolution at the 519 planning board meeting. Okay, we don't have anyone here from the applicant, and I don't think we have any more further discussion, correct?
Oh, that was a good move.
Good, okay. All right, next up is 3900 State Street, Kia Automotive, a site plan application requiring a special use permit for building expansion for additional service bays, new signage, merging with 25 and 17 South Fagan Ave, and expansion of the parking lot. Project lead is Mr. Laflamme.
Chairman, thank you. Vinny, good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
As a highlight, I guess last week, last Monday, the 28th, a few of us, Leslie, Sarah, myself, Laura, met at the site with Vinny and his architect from CHA. We walked the grounds. We really looked at the surrounding impacting area with this application of, again, combining two lots, make it part of the main commercial lot for the purpose of parking, just to kind of repeat. In the process of doing that, we'd be tearing down a house. We looked at the grade. There are some grade challenges. One of the things we wanted to see from the applicant was an improved traffic flow, one that would accommodate truck delivery and minimal impact on neighborhood streets. So there was definitely a pretty high grade toward the existing dealership, but there seems to be a plan to address that with regrading. We observed some lot improvements, some walking hazards and some potholes and things of that nature. And there's a pretty significant drainage line in the lot. So that was discussed as part of the package to at least repair the lot. The fencing, which would be around the perimeter, that would, I think, be within the code of 6 feet, would be a nice alternative to some of the mismatch of fencing and other things. Again, while preserving as much tree buffering and add some additional buffering to the neighbors. I think there were like 4 adjacent lots that would be impacted by the change theoretically, but the fence would be going all the way across the back. And then we also observed the house that currently the applicant owns. We walked that property too, where the lot line would be adjusted to, which is a separate application that comes after this one. And it just seemed to make sense. There were a couple questions about the spruce tree and a power line that ran through it. We kind of came to the conclusion that likelihood the power lines could be deactivated, or they just might be already deactivated, and the actual telephone poles might be able to be removed, which would help the project. So all in all, I think we got a good sense of what the applicant's redesign is. Anything else I missed that maybe we observed and discussed, or that we should all discuss as a result of our site visit?
Did you talk about the dumpster enclosures?
Yeah, we did. Thank you, Laura. We also went to the actual existing premise, looked at some lighting, and someone identified lights that were actually on during the day. Hopefully we got those turned off and we're saving some money already, which no big deal, but they were identified. Right in that area, there is an existing enclosure for a dumpster, I would gather. And currently there are 2 dumpsters and they're outside the enclosure. The way they're oriented, it probably makes sense where they are based on how the truck would have to come back in. And then the enclosure is used for tire storage, which actually buffers the tires from the rest of the neighborhood. So we discussed that. I don't know if we put any requirements. We put a request in though to look into the fencing height to the neighbors adjacent to where the dumpsters would be, and an enclosure to those dumpsters that are currently where they're sitting. I don't know if it makes sense to change the enclosure that holds the tires, because it does actually enclose the tires in. But we talked about that. We also talked about a curb cut out to that side street, which I can't remember the name of the side street. Amherst?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amherst. And that was it just came up. I don't remember if you brought it up or if it was a wayfinding or a shorter path to pick up the trash, but that came up too. And anything else?
The only thing, because I'm coming to this and was not part of it originally, that we didn't discuss because it was a beautiful sunny afternoon, is the lighting for that additional parking. Because I'm just curious, given that it's abutting homes.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you speak
Maybe
to
we
that?
can have, the applicant discuss it, but it was thoroughly discussed. I think there
Previously, okay.
were certain low light, what's the proper term?
Low throw. So that,
Yeah, it was a floodlight that didn't protrude
They were
out.
shielded.
Shielded, yeah,
Yes.
shielded,
Mhm.
that's it. So that was a big discussion. And there were more of them, I think, on the first application.
Okay.
It's a little different now. I will note, though, that the grade away from the residence is significant. So as you go further toward Fagan, don't know what they would see, you know, as you go down, but further up,
Mhm.
And that was on the original run-through. There was a lighting plan that will then incorporate into the new plan that absolutely addresses the fact that there are neighbors all around us. So we're cognizant of that and we're sensitive to that.
we did request that the applicant do an analysis of that tree that may be considered in the plan, keeping it, but only if it's healthy, you know, and that a true arborist, you know, who's not affiliated with anything other than health of a tree, give you advice on that before we want to or not want to keep it in the plan.
I mean, that tree would end up coinciding with what you got marked as green space right now, right?
Correct.
Right.
It's on the, just about on the border of the
Okay.
pavement area. So it would encroach
would
somewhat
encroach
into
some.
the pavement.
It would eliminate some number of parking spots on what's drawn?
Maybe
Um,
one, maybe two, it depends on the
Yeah,
on the roots, right? Because you have to come out a certain distance from the roots.
that I couldn't answer.
Well, an arborist would be able to tell you.
Yes,
that.
they would. they should.
Okay.
It's close.
Yeah.
When we looked, I felt like it was going to probably end up being a corner that would cut off one spot. But I don't know. It just seemed like it might be in that area.
Chris, when the team was, and you know, I wasn't able to, when the team was walking, what about the existing house where we're making a lot line adjustment for? You know, the one on the southern end of this plot. Is that house is functional?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about houses, right, is every house that isn't brand new needs maintenance and repair, and deferred maintenance has to be addressed. I'd say the house falls in that category. It's a house, you know, it looks like a dwelling that you might see in any neighborhood. But there's definitely things that we could observe that the applicant would be looking into.
And it's currently vacant.
It looked like it was vacant.
It is
yeah.
currently vacant, yes. We go in it every 4 to 6 weeks just to make sure that it's,
Still vacant.
And your plan for that property and house would be to sell it?
that would be one of the options, yes.
Just to confirm, or to reword that option, all options include it existing as a structure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, there isn't an option where we're coming in and saying, we've agreed to leave the house, subject to the lot line adjustment that gives us the ability to operate on the other.
I mean, is demolishing it and building another house an option?
Not for us. Not for us, but I'm certain that there might be someone interested in doing that. The question becomes, if we were to market the house, it does have some characteristics that can make that complicated. Just from walking through the house and observing it. So this may be a project for someone, just not for us.
Let me ask a question for clarity.
Yeah.
If the project were to be approved, the expectation is that a single-family dwelling would remain a dwelling,
Yes,
and that you would make it safe to use as the owner of the property.
yes. And by us, whether or not we hire a contractor to do that prior to selling it, or whether we sell it to someone who can do that and then handle that on our behalf, those were two of the options we considered. Another option that we talked about last time that I don't know that we got clarity on was to whether or not if we fixed it up for ourselves and it was a house, could we have remote workers work out of the house?
Oh, I see.
Employees.
I see.
Is that another option to make it not just a vacant piece of property, but I'm just considering that as a third option to even know if I have that ability. Is there anything in the code that precludes me from doing that?
They would have to live there, and
Yes.
then they could remote work from there.
Okay.
You're allowed to have home occupations and remote work from your home. The only way that wouldn't work is if they didn't live there and they were essentially like commuting the house to have it be an office. But if you live there, you can remote work from there.
So you can't have it like a bunkhouse. That makes sense, right?
No, I follow.
Unless one of the members lives there.
Yeah, my question was whether the CH allows for that to be to look like a house but operate like an office.
Well, it does have uses like childcare and adult care, and there's
Yeah,
a
you would
variety
have-
of uses in that
You would have to
district.
get site plan approval for it to be an office
Uh-huh.
building then.
So let me simplify this. Go back to what we said first. Plan A and / Plan B would be to obtain the lot line adjustment, carve that piece of property out, get our project complete so that whether we market to the public or to someone who's going to rehab the house, they could see what they were buying.
Yeah.
At that point, if we pivoted, that would be a completely separate question that we would bring to the board to say, hey, this is what we want to do. Is this an option? And then we would consider that. But I'm just asking informal discussion questions.
Yep.
I remain concerned about expanding commercial use into an existing neighborhood.
Yes,
But I
understood.
do have a couple questions. One is, if this moves forward, would the town review the grading changes before they were accomplished?
Yeah, they haven't really done full engineering on the site. Like they're not at the point
Mhm.
where the GE drawings are. Yeah, we would look at all the grading because there's definitely significant
Yeah.
grading. that have to be-
And there could be impact on other properties.
Yeah,
And I don't think we discussed noise issues. I know some car dealerships have had extensive PA systems so that you could be out looking at cars and, by the way, your car's ready, and they blast the message out to the immediate world. Would your company be doing that kind of thing?
We don't have that currently, and we wouldn't add it. So no, we use a
Text service.
texting. Yeah. No, and so that lot especially, even if we had it, we wouldn't expand it to that lot. But currently, they text.
I just had a quick question. Forgive me, I wasn't at the site visit, but
No worries.
the home 17 South Vegan, that is uninhabitable.
The one that,
That's going to demolish.
yeah, the applicant would like to raise it as part of the application. So whether it's habitable or not, I don't know if we can even comment on that, but we've been told it's in pretty rough shape.
We did not go in, and I
No.
wouldn't say it's uninhabitable.
I think
The
my
foundation didn't look bad. The building looked pretty straight.
I think
Don't know what the
I
inside
think my
is.
concern lies in similar to Leslie's is when we're reducing possible space where people can live and expanding the commercial property. Like if we're tearing down houses that have the potential to have, a residence, whether it's, if it's something that's condemned, then it needs to be knocked down. That's one thing. But if it's just something that can be repaired, whether that work plan is complex or not,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be my preference to get rid of something that is a possible residence for the town.
It's a good comment. It's actually a pretty common comment. There was a lot of discussion on the last application, which I'm not sure if you were on the board at that time, but with this particular district, as CH, we're trying to find a harmony between the commercial and the residential use without sacrificing either and without giving a great advantage to either. So we did have an applicant that included tearing down more homes. This application has just one, even though it's one that we might prize as a differentiated housing opportunity. It is very adjacent to this commercial. It is almost inappropriately close and odd and maybe even scary to some extent because it's so close to the commercial and not sure if people care for it the same way. So I'm not making excuses. You're going to vote the way you're going to vote, but this application is coming to us with the removal of one home, whereas before there were more. And I personally will vote in favor of a variance for a lot line adjustment to preserve a home, even though it's outside the code, for the benefit of that residential neighborhood participating in an application whose final result is a cooperation of benefits of all.
It's a compromise. I shared that concern, but when you see its location and proximity to the commerce that's already happening, I actually think
Yeah.
that this compromise is a good way to preserve and create a property that's livable and allow this expansion to happen because of that.
Yeah.
As you said, how close it is, like it's right on top of
Yeah.
the current lot.
If you haven't driven by,
Yeah.
it's worth it because I'm with you. The
It's
house,
unique.
look, if you just look at the house, like
Mhm.
Leslie said, house is pretty interesting. You know, it's a brick structure. Just where it is and how it participates in this unique mixed zone where we have to try to find a balance.
Yeah, for me, the specific house we're discussing is really, it's the trade-off that allows for the increased safety of having the car deliveries be done on the property, not on the street, right? And having delivery trucks being on the property, not on the street or the side streets, right? I think, right, so one is a trade-off in a house for all the reasons mentioned, by Chris and Sarah. And then weighing that against the other side is, safe delivery on that part of Central Avenue. Although that responsibility is the truck drivers and the trucking company's responsibility,
No doubt.
if Chief Cochan's hearing me, it's a fantastic opportunity for ticket revenue. But until then. But I guess a question I have about the home that'll remain. So one of the options you mentioned, and I'm not going to go too far down this thread, so an option is potentially to sell it to someone that could potentially raise that house and build another one.
Oh, and I don't know if they would raise it and build another one unless they
Right.
deemed that they couldn't take what was there.
Yeah.
And so I'm not an engineer.
Right, so
I'm
there's
not
a discussion then for the planning board. In
Yes.
that being it could be equally probable in all of his options. That's why I brought up to some extent the setbacks on the existing southern line, where right now those setbacks are non-conforming. Right, we agree? I think one of these drawings, probably the one on page, which one?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
5.3,
One drawing,
3.1.
I am on page 151. Is that what you said, Laura?
The setback's 5.3.
Yeah, but the drawing on page 1, this drawing shows it best if you zoom into that top. So let's assume for a moment someone was to determine that, not someone, you sell it to someone. They determine that this house can be kept and they need to raise it and the garage, etc. A compliant home could be fit into that with the right setbacks, right?
Yeah,
It'd be long and narrow. It'd
Yeah.
be a little longer and narrower, but not extremely long and narrow.
Okay, I just wanted to get that on the record.
So, Mr. Khan, to your point, you're saying if they did take it down, they would lose the grandfathering of the non-conforming side of the house. Understood. Yeah, and I agree.
And I just wanted to make sure that the planning board and department, would be okay with that.
yeah, I think that, it could use some work, but I find that house also to have a lot of character. Be
Yeah.
very pretty. It would be unlikely to me that that
It's
house would be taken
savable.
down.
I mean, from a layman's look and walking inside it, it's savable with some
Right.
investment.
Yeah. If
Which,
you were to,
if it wasn't, I would come to you and say, here's why we were going to take it down. We're not in the business of taking down just generally good houses for our own use. We are in the business of running a business. Sometimes we want to do things that don't make sense to the board, but they make sense to us. We're here via what I would say is a multitude of compromises on our part to try to get that done. Between the two houses, that is the house that is significantly more savable.
and if you were to put a new house on there, you would probably change the configuration of the driveway
Mhm.
and have the garage on the front. It would be front loading.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to
Maybe
check
50.
that as,
Yeah.
It's a great point, Laura, you could do.
yeah, I'm sure we can, okay.
I've got a procedural question, because we've got the designation, any home over 50 years old
Mhm.
is deemed historic. Do we know if the house that they want to tear down has any particular historical value? Is there procedure to have somebody look at that issue?
I think they may have looked at it already, but if they haven't, yes, they would look at it again. Clark, do you remember if Rita looked at that?
Actually, it's a great point. I'm not sure, but we can get them going on that
Yeah,
tomorrow.
we can just get them going on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm not an expert on that part of town.
Yeah, me neither.
I grew up in the Northwest. I know a fair amount of the history there. A little bit on Troy Road, very little bit on Balltown at the southern end, but not this particular neighborhood.
Yeah, we'll get Rita. If she didn't do it already, we'll have her look at it.
Thank you.
So a couple items. On past Friday, we had an economic committee development meeting. We reviewed this project. And one of the main discussion points actually was the safety that comes with the car deliveries. And we brought up the plans. We showed them how the trucks could get off the street where they would load on that pass through, come back down through the site and reviewed that. So that was something that received a lot of positive feedback. Laura, if you could keep the existing plan up that shows the location of the one house. So I was previously on the board when we saw the first application. I did vote against this because of the removal of the two houses that were there. One of the takeaways from our meeting on Friday that I called the planning department with was to take an aerial view of our section of State Street. And what I wanted to see was a map of how much does the commercial footprint of each business zigzag into the abutting neighborhoods. We do this, and we just did this on a recent project, which was residential, but it was on a road, specifically looking at setbacks and lot sizes. I think that would be very good for the board to see how much these commercial businesses are actually, and I don't want to use the word encroaching, but abutting the existing residential neighborhoods. And if we notice that there is sort of a line of demarcation, or we notice a really aggressive pattern that goes in, that might help some of us make a decision on the extents that you've proposed thus far, which is smaller than the previous project. But again, it may also show that this one juts way further up than what the typical line is. So I think between now and the next meeting, the planning department will be able to do that. It'll be an aerial map of about a mile long. We'll see a little red line going up and around the properties, and we'll share that with you as well.
So that's something you're going to do?
That's something we're going to do.
Okay,
It's an exercise that we're going to do.
No, I wrote that down for our engineer. I'll take that off.
Yeah, it just helps us see what the developmental patterns are.
Understood. Yeah, I can visually understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I started it actually.
Good.
And what's interesting about it, which I didn't realize until I started doing it, is there's at least 4 single-family homes that are still on State Street.
Yeah.
So it is quite a little like journey,
Yep.
because sometimes the houses come all the way up to State Street, and sometimes they're pushed back a little. But I'll have it ready for the next.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm sure you're seeing it, Laura, right, that you got to take into consideration is that Albany Street is a demarcating cross street, kind of, limits what some of those encroachments can be.
Oh
right,
yeah,
to
when
use
it's
that word.
close, when they run parallel. But here actually.
Yeah, so which way are you going to go? If we're at Amherst, when you're doing the study, you're going to go,
I did it.
east on
Well, I
State
started
Street?
it. Well, actually, I did it for State Street in the entirety of Niskayuna, but I still am tweaking it a little.
Okay.
But yeah, when Albany and State Street are parallel, Albany is a very clear
Mhm.
line. But
Yep.
when Albany starts to
merge
go
over.
funny,
yeah.
that's when you're really looking at where the commercial properties are.
Okay.
I think there was a blue residential home that was also.
Yeah,
dropped.
it's still there. It's vacant. That one.
But
is.
they, I think it's gone.
Oh, did they demolish it?
It was really dark blue.
Yeah.
I drove by it. I think it's not in the town of Niskayuna, but it's very close to this area. It's been there for years. But anyhow, I think that was the point, is how much is the commercial encroaching on the residential? So I think they just dropped a building.
Yeah, I think it's Chairman, the opinion, I think it's a very interesting study to look at.
Yeah. I
It'll
started
be,
it.
what,
I'll have
what
it
it,
ready.
what the consequences are and implications will be interesting, but
And I believe at the end of Fagan, it comes back to commercial, correct? At
At
the other
end
end?
of Fagan,
Yeah.
it's gone into Albany County. So at the intersection of South Fagan and Albany Street, I think there is another business that's
Yeah.
entirely within the town of Colony, though.
interior auto.
Yeah, so that the houses are sandwiched between us.
Two
and
commercials.
them.
Commercial.
We love the town of Colony, but we don't.
Yeah.
Our zoning doesn't always comply with their zoning.
A couple
So,
of things.
so just to
Um,
kind of recap, where the last thing that was the takeaway from that was also, so looking at that, where that outline will be, and I do agree, that existing house is closely being enveloped by commercial development. And the location might not be pristine, but the takeaway of having the parking lot where that house would be and then going on to the vacant parcel is that there is a reversibility aspect of it is a parking lot. And for anyone, if Matthews isn't there in X amount of years and that business changes hands, a smaller business might want to come in. There is the opportunity for an undeveloped lot to be sold off a lot easier than there is with a building that's on the lot, because it might not fit exactly for what someone's looking for.
To add to that comment, all of the houses on Amherst have a benefit to a residential on Fagan, right? If it's all commercial on Fagan, then it changes, I think it changes the character and the living experience for those folks in Amherst. Even though we're obviously having a negative impact with this application, having the one residential, I think actually remains a sense of residential to those neighboring houses.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm hearing you correctly,
Mhm.
it's a positive that it's going to be just a parking lot, is what you're saying, because it could reverse itself back later on.
It has,
If
it has the potential. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it's a positive, but it has the potential
All right,
to
I won't put
be,
words in your mouth, but
it has the potential
Right.
for probably an easier path to develop for redevelopment than it would if there was a building on there. Say part of your application put an outbuilding that did detailing or something on the
Right.
back of the lot, or there was a, customer service reception area in the back for some reason. That would make it very different. But having just a parking lot is actually a little bit
Correct.
more appealing, because then somebody could come in and look at a tax map and say, oh, I could build a house here if I chose to.
from our review of the code, if I recall correctly, the parking lot being auto creates a special use permit.
Correct.
But the CH, I could put a Burger King there without any special permit. So I agree that is, as much as we need the special permit, the use is less encumbering on the property.
But just as a reminder, they're combining all these parcels together.
Mhm.
So there won't really be a vacant lot there anymore, and it would have to be subdivided out.
Right.
And at that point, you're looking at what the minimum square footage is for particular areas in commercial highway. I mean, sometimes they're like 1 acre, but sometimes they're only like 18,000 square feet. So you'd have to look, and it would be a subdivision.
And I will note, across the street, not far from this site, there is a commercial property that has been before this board several times, trying to expand and whatnot. And we've worked very hard to keep it from overtaking the neighborhood behind it,
Which one's that?
RJ Murray.
Oh.
Because the neighbors came in complaining that they were selling vehicles and the purchasers were test driving them on their little residential street. And that was a big issue.
That's the like the trailers outdoor 4-wheeler store.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that. I've read the resolutions on that.
And I will note, I think the town of Colony has been trying to be more careful about keeping the commercial on Central Avenue from taking over the neighborhoods. There's one business, I can't remember what year it was constructed, but when you go in their parking, when you come out, it's very clear you have to turn right and go right out to Central. They don't want you going on that residential street. And there's actually a second point where you would think you could go around and go out onto Central, but you can't. It's signed that you should not. So I think over time, they're looking at it a little differently than they used to.
Okay. Any other discussion points?
I guess just one question, Chairman Walsh, procedural. Are we going to, given that the site visit happened, that we kind of have an understanding of, there are 2 line items currently, 2 applications. We're going to continue treating them as 2, or are we going to merge them, or?
Well, I feel in particular that they're 2 applications.
Okay.
And I don't, unless the applicant wanted to merge them, I would think that this one would take the
Continue.
precedent over the other one, given what they've, been spoken about. if this is the plan that we've continually seen, we would give them the opportunity if they wanted to, modify this or change it with whatever. But it sounds like the applicant is pretty steadfast and this is the plan they want to move forward with. Our next move would be to call for a public hearing, I believe. Resolution for the May 19th meeting. And let's keep gathering information.
Would the public hearing be for both applications?
No.
Just for
Just for this
corner
one.
project?
I mean, so the advantage of doing this one first, I think, is the public hearing, right? Because if we were doing just a lot line adjustment, we would not need a public hearing for that.
Yeah. So the lot line is tied to this plan. We talked about it before. And I actually think the lot line, it may be challenging at the zoning board level just because it's a vacant lot, but having a, having a public hearing on the site plan should help with a recommendation. This board is so, the one thing that I would probably note is that 30 feet may end up, when I was just looking at the map that I was making for you, David, and you can see this next time, I think that it's very close to being the biggest, and it may end up even being like third. So it's really going to be important to this board to know exactly how many spaces are being lost by that 30 feet. Or can you, like right now, the driveway or the parking kind of parallels the houses. Can you shift it so that it actually kind of curves along the street? I don't know. There's a lot of things you're going to have to look at, and you're really going to have to figure out.
Yeah. So that's why,
parking spots.
look, that's why I cursorily commented and labeled it as the most, non-descriptive statement when I said interesting, right? I have a hunch when your analysis is done, this is going to be the biggest abutting.
This would be what?
It's the biggest.
It's going to
one
be the
that
biggest one that
encroaches,
abuts
yeah.
into the residential.
I think it probably is, but I think the 30 feet can make it almost equivalent. So you really got to look at what you're gaining with that 30 feet.
So, Laura, let me just ask something to clarify before Vinny does. Are you saying that the project you're doing to compare the encroachment of commercial will put this lot line adjustment comparable to the next largest encroachment? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying, for me, looking at the map, I'm still putting the finishing touches on it. It looks to me like this would be the deepest into the residential neighborhood,
Biggest encroachment.
but it's helped by them saving the house quite a bit, and it's close enough that 30 feet may actually make it more equivalent. If you left the 80 feet with the single family home, that's pushing your line another 30 feet back. At that point, it may be equivalent to a couple. I'll show it to you in a map. But
No, that's okay. Well,
couple
I'm not
lots down.
sure if it matters.
Yeah.
If it's equivalent or not, or if it is the one that has the leading encroachment. But are you asking us all to be aware of how many parking lots would be lost if the zoning board denies the application?
Yeah, I think it's really reasonable to understand that.
Yeah, so if we could I guess it'd be worth, kind of like Mr. Khan had that in the prior applicant, what does the sign look like without
Understood.
asking for a variance?
Yeah.
What would the parking lot look like without asking for that variance? How many parking spaces are lost?
So
And include the grade challenge, because I think part of the challenge is that you have to go uphill with a good throw without it being too steep. And this lot line adjustment allows that.
correct. So, and we did that originally from taking the house down to here. So I understand what you're asking for. If we were to go further, there does come a point where the value
It's not worth it.
is
Yeah.
not worth it.
Well, what I recall from that is, what's the last thing he said? If he doesn't get that lot line adjustment, I don't think he's doing this project.
Yeah, that's an important one so even if we know what the impact to the parking is, the impact to our goal to try to find a compromise and to improve safety might be lost. Maybe that's what we have to understand more so than the parking spaces.
And in fact, just so you know, I'm glad we're having this. That's the only logical argument for me as to why I believe we should look at this one first before the lot line adjustment.
Yeah.
Because I actually find the lot line adjustment is contingent on this application for the expanded parking lot.
Yeah, but I'm just recommending that you guys understand the configurations. It's in the applicant's own benefit, actually, to understand what he's asking for with the zoning board, because that argument's going to need to flesh out. It's going to need to be fleshed out. Even the dollars and cents arguments are very powerful
Yeah.
at the zoning board. So, yeah, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to need
to.
to, Vinny, you're going to need to communicate to the zoning board why you actually need the parking lot to
Correct.
be as depicted.
Which we were prepared
Mhm,
last time
mhm,
to tell you why we needed the house down.
mhm.
That was, there's been a series of compromises from our spot, and I feel like we've done a good job of listening to the board. I will absolutely have our team prepare what it would look like without that lot line adjustment, what the loss would be to us, what the spaces left would be, and why that blows the project up.
So Chairman will call for a resolution calling for a public hearing,
Correct.
and then we'll have updated drawings.
And just so the board's clear, 3900 State Street is a special use permit that's going to the town board. The soft transition that we just talked about from 25 South Fagan to 33 is the zoning
Zoning
board
board.
recommendation for the lot line adjustment.
Yeah.
That's for the variance, correct? And so two separate projects working at
Yeah.
parallel to each other, but at different speeds.
I mean, at the end of the day, by us looking at this one first, the one the special use going town board, you're actually, you're, if it's all favorable, you're diminishing your risk earlier than later.
Yes.
And,
So-
go ahead.
For clarification then, the public hearing is going to be for the main project,
This one.
This one, the one we'll play.
which I don't even know if I know the answer to this. The combination of the properties and or the lot line adjustment, which the combination of the properties is in which proposal? Is that part of the,
It's actually part of the special use permit and site plan.
so that's the one that's going to be part of the public hearing?
Correct.
Is combining the properties, okay.
Basically, what we see here
Yes,
is what will be part of
Exactly.
correct.
the night.
So
Yeah.
the public would be opining on their opinion of this entire project. Well, the other piece would still be subject to approval from the ZBA.
Just so we're clear, that line to the south,
It is, I mean,
the
this
barrier of the parking lot
is
is the
depicting
new lot line.
Is it
Yeah,
not?
it is
Yeah.
depicting
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lot line. They're all still connected. It's just the only board that can waive the lot line adjustment is the zoning board, and that is why it has to be a separate application.
Mhm.
But the public hearing is on this project as proposed. It does require a variance from the zoning board on the lot line adjustment.
Yep.
Do you think that it has to go to the zoning board before it goes to the special use public hearing?
That's what I've been wondering.
I don't think so. So let's go forward with the procedural stuff for the resolutions to call for the public hearing. And we'll look at it between
Yeah,
now
well,
and
we
then.
can just double
But-
check.
Like, it makes sense for these to sort of, even though they're different applications, to be on sort of a parallel track procedurally where we can be, right? Like, they're going to different places, but the applicant doesn't want the lot line adjustment without the big part, right? That's not helpful. So, yeah, we'll look at it before the next planning board meeting to be sure.
I think what you summarized, and I think the plan we have as two applications is solid. But let me at least ask this question for the applicant's sake. Why wouldn't we make this one application?
Well, so you have to talk about them all together, but administratively, the lot line adjustment has to be filed separately and essentially approved. You can't approve a lot line adjustment under a special use permit. A lot line adjustment is a subdivision. It's a separate code.
No, agreed. I
Yeah.
wouldn't,
Can I
one
take a-
application, but one action goes to.
Can I
one
take
re-
a stab at answering that?
Yeah, okay.
He's not going to move the line if this project doesn't get approved. So he has no desire, I don't want to speak for him, but the applicant isn't buying the land of the house to make a smaller lot. He's proposing this project, which is a consequence of this project is a lot line adjustment logistically based on our procedures.
No, that's my point. My
So
point is.
I'm just thinking that's the answer.
Yeah.
Why they're not combined is he's only interested in the application enlarging his parking.
Right, but it becomes contingent on that lot line, right? So we could have an action
We could.
where one action from ours is a recommendation to the ZBA and another action is a recommendation to the town board.
Yeah, that's
On the
what I
same
think we should
application.
do. Yeah.
So it allows us to do that.
No, but on one application.
Yeah, so I mean, it always has to be multiple applications, but do you mean like one item, like
One
blanket
item, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not even sure if we've even encountered that before where,
It needed so many different approvals for
Yeah.
one project. I can't think of one.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it is clear to the board, we could take 4 and 5 and make it like
Yeah.
one agenda item that we're working on together. But it'll always have to be separate.
No, agreed. In fact, let me get back to the crux of what I'm going after here. So currently, as we have these two applications, dealing first with the pictures depicted as the application, then having a lot line. The question for me comes is the arguments made to the ZBA. So are we tying the hands of the ZBA by approving on a separate application by making a recommendation to the town board to grant a special use permit for something that puts the ZBA in a position where for all of those things to rank affirmative, the ZBA would have to accept that there's a lot line adjustment.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what Rob and I are just gonna have to double check.
Yeah.
Because if you were to combine it all as an agenda item, I think it would get a denial. The special use permit would get like an outright denial. And I believe that would have to go to the zoning board before you could make a recommendation to the
So,
town board.
so Laura, will the special use permit approval, if it's approved, be received before this goes to zoning board?
Well, I was thinking we would run them concurrently.
So to Jingus's point, I don't think we're handcuffed. I don't know what the term was, but
Yeah.
I think what we're setting is this lot line adjustment isn't vanilla, right? This lot line adjustment is part and parcel to a larger application that's solving these problems for the town. That's how you should vote. And I think that separating and having them not in parallel, but have them in serial might be the way to go. I think the zoning board ought to make a decision on lot line adjustment, understanding the whole project.
If we do it in serial, the zoning board would have to go first.
But here's
Oh,
the
they would?
thing.
Absolutely.
The applicant probably doesn't want to proceed with the lot line adjustment if the project's looking like it's going down.
Yeah.
And we don't make the final decision on the special use permit. We make a recommendation to the town board. Similarly, we make a recommendation to the ZBA on the variance. They don't have to take our advice, nor does the town board.
No, but we do get to
So
give our recommendation
it's-
and why, right? Yeah.
You know, I think it's a whole lot cleaner for the record if we keep them as two separate agenda items because they have to go different ways.
But run in parallel.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question for clarity? The line adjustment, if it was granted and the variance it didn't work out, they don't have to keep moving forward.
It's true.
So I don't know. I don't see the consequence in having the lot line adjustment so that it can be considered as a complete plan. Because otherwise we're having a hearing on something that it wouldn't be accurate because it's not approved.
But the lot line adjustment, if it was approved by the ZBA, would be binding.
Oh, it
Yes.
is.
Mhm.
That's my question.
It is.
Would be
fine.
It is binding.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
I
yeah,
mean-
that's the answer you're looking for, correct?
yes. Like once it's done
Correct.
and they don't get the other part, they can't.
They
You
can't,
can't just
they
revoke
can't
it.
just
That's my
revert it
question.
and say, I want to go back to where we were
Okay.
prior to owning it, correct?
Well, it's binding in that once the zoning board grants of area variance, it's then compliant. But the final step would be them recording the lot line adjustment. So if they got the approvals and they didn't record the lot line adjustment,
Right, but
it would
if,
just be very unusual for someone to go through all those steps and then not record the lot line.
yeah, right, but if we
Eventually
go,
it could
yeah,
be
Like, you
problematic.
do have to record the lot line adjustment with a certain amount of time. from
right,
getting-
but if we go to the ZBA first and they do not approve the lot line adjustment, then project number 2, special use permit is
Mhm.
dead.
Yeah, so what I was envisioning honestly is that, you call for the public hearing at for a resolution at the next meeting, at the same time you do a recommendation to the zoning board on the area variance, you kind of send the project over to the zoning board to look at the area variance. You get public comment on it, they get public comment on it. You see where that lands, and then that gives you a path forward for doing a recommendation to the town board.
Right, so you've given more clarity to the sequence, right? So really what we're doing by taking a look at the special use permit application first is really calling for that public hearing earlier than later,
Which I love to have them early.
right? Yep, I think we all agree there. So we'll have a public hearing, but then the next action after that public hearing will be an action recommending to the ZBA
Yeah, or
on
you
the second application.
do it at the same meeting.
Right, I mean, it could all be in the same meeting, that's fine, but I mean, 1 hour later. Right?
So I think there's a practical issue here that matters to the zoning board.
Mhm.
So the lot line adjustment to you guys is sort of an add-on, but it's not a layout. So it's going to be important for the applicant when they go to the ZBA to say that the planning board has recommended the variance on the lot line, but has also recommended the special use permit to the town board, so they have more to work with. Because otherwise, if you just look at the lot line adjustment, they're in a much better position if you like the project, if it's further along, so they have more to argue with at the zoning board.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm torn a little bit because I don't, that's the comment I made earlier. If I was a member of the zoning board, I would feel by approving by making a positive recommendation to this town board on this special use permit, I would feel my hands as a zoning board member are tied a little bit. Right? Because of the arguments you just cited.
Yeah, so first of all, I think that that's a real issue, and I don't mean to diminish that at all.
Yeah.
I think the problem that we run into as a practical matter is that generally the zoning board doesn't know enough about what you guys do. And so they're working with so much less information that they don't see the big picture as well. So I'm not sure, Jengus, if that helps, that answers your question or not. But the reason that I like the idea is I think the ZBA needs to see the big picture if they can.
Agreed, and I'm really close to just a neutral point on this, so I can stop. I would think it's up then, if we were to go forward first with the recommendation to the ZBA, then it's up to the applicant to make the case to the ZBA as to why they should grant it. But for us as a planning board to already throw into that mix a positive recommendation on special use permit to the town board, right? It's the statement I made earlier, right? We're taking on some of the burden that's on the applicant relative to the town board, relative to the ZBA, by making a positive recommendation prior to that ZBA event. Even if we were running them in parallel, one thing is going to be in one date and the other thing is going to be in the other date, right?
Yeah, and I understand what Rob mean. I think it would be important to the zoning board to know what the planning board's position was on the special use permit, because it is relevant to the request for the lot line adjustment.
And
But
that we
I
are
do
going to
see
have a
why
public
that's
hearing.
hard.
We're going to have
Yeah.
a public hearing to also incorporate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, but to, Jengus's point, I mean, what they're really looking at is what is the benefit to the applicant? What are the hardships, those
Yeah.
types of things.
I mean, we could, if we are able to arrive at a consensus relative to a recommendation to the the town board, prior to making that recommendation, we could articulate it to the ZBA. The key thing is making it something, it becomes binding once it leaves us
And-
as a recommendation to the town board.
The only thing that's hard about that is that you're sort of concreting a recommendation on the special use permit without a public hearing.
And we shouldn't do
And you shouldn't do that either. It's such a complicated, and I'm sorry for that, but it is so complicated with all the steps that are required for the project.
And I guess the key thing would be, in this logic, the first public hearing would actually be the ZBA's public hearing.
Which actually happens a fair amount. It does cause some issues at the zoning board though, because it's the first time that people get a mail out and they come with a lot of planning board issues.
Yeah.
But the zoning board is relatively good at parsing through that.
All right, so I think where we were originally, we would call for a public hearing for the special use permit application. depending on how that goes, we have whatever discussions we have, whatever. But then the next event would be, it could be in the same meeting. We make a recommendation to the ZBA. And then sometime after that, on the second application, the lot line adjustment.
Mhm.
And then after that recommendation gets made to the ZBA, we can come back and make a recommendation to the
Yeah.
town board on a.
Yeah.
Do we have to wait for the ZBA's answer?
Mm. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know if you have to wait for the ZBA to answer, but if they don't get the lot line adjustment, then there's a chance the project's not going forward.
yeah,
So the
yeah.
applicant's gonna slow walk it until they get the ZBA recommendation, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I would agree with that.
Right. And so I think this process, as long as we're not violating anything, I'm comfortable with it, because the key thing, like I said, my concern was I don't want to have a presupposed log decision and recommendation, special use permit from the planning board prior to the ZBA, but I also don't want to be unfair to the applicant, right? So I think this way we're mitigating all the risks. And we'll have the first public hearing on the special use permit in this board.
Yeah, and if it makes you guys feel any better, Clark and I talked about the process, I don't know, a lot longer than this.
No, I agree, and I thank you for the
It's not
guidance, and thank you for what you, Clark and Rob, have said here. But I think I just want to make sure that we're doing a fair process to the applicant and to the
To
ZBA.
the other boards, the town
Right,
board and the zoning
and
board.
therefore to the town,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
I've got one odd question. I know Matthews has other dealerships. What's the nearest one?
The Hyundai across the street.
How do they get their cars delivered?
Can I refrain from answering that?
Do they use
It's
State
the
Street or?
same company that delivers, same companies ship cars for everybody. I imagine they're stopping somewhere and unloading their cars. I haven't been here when it's happened, Ms. Gold, but
So we don't know the process there.
correct.
You do know at one point, Matthews Hyundai had a plan, but it never got submitted to the town.
It's still in the works.
It is still in the works.
Yeah, we're actually required by both Kia and Hyundai to make the improvements, so they're going in that order.
I mean, this image here is great because unfortunately it shows where your lots are. They're kind of fractured. And when you look at some of the car dealerships, even some of the new ones that are going up on like around 7, they're all very lineal. They run parallel with the street. And you've got one that comes back at an angle. And I think the merit to this application is the building renovations. To me, I think that is really a key piece to this. It's going to be a nice enhancement. It's going to make a sleeker look to a dated building. Those are some of the better attributes of this.
I completely agree, and this project makes that project viable.
And, unfortunately, you're bookended by two closer. It's
Yeah.
a tighter lot.
Yeah,
Um,
if I could
stress
redesign this
soil.
from the ground up, it'd look a lot different.
Yeah.
But we're working with what we have.
And I'm still considering, I have not made up my mind on this at all.
I really strongly
It's-
feel that this map that Laura's working on, that we talked about on Friday with
Might
Clark,
help.
I think is going to be a really interesting thing. And you're not the only applicant we've asked this from. We've done this with other residential projects. It really makes we seem to sometimes hone in on just the site plan that we see here. And, it's up to us to also kind of look holistically at the neighborhoods and where we are. So with that, we've touched a little bit here on 25 and 33. Did you want to talk any further about those? I think this is a good time to make a transition into that lot line. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Other than our site walk, what I'd be looking for from the board is if there are any items relating to what we just talked about that I haven't answered, that's still a legitimate concern that I can consider. We've certainly had open ears along the way and made adjustments accordingly. I would love to know if you don't believe in the project right now, why, and what can I do to convince you otherwise?
One other thing is the Conservation Advisory Council
Mhm.
had struggled with the former project. They haven't seen the changes. I will be bringing it to them on Wednesday. So you're welcome to attend that meeting, or I can share the changes with them as well.
I won't be able to make that meeting, and I don't think Devin will be back in town, but it's
Okay,
going to the
because-
CAC.
Yeah, applicants don't always attend the CAC. It's
Okay.
kind of up to you guys. But you'll get some comments from them probably too.
Okay.
Complete Streets looked at it. They love the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They do wish the sidewalk could go a little farther down South Fagan, but they think the sidewalk would be a major improvement to the whole area.
Good to know.
Oh, and they also thought, I'll show you. There's street trees between the sidewalk and the road. And they didn't know why that didn't continue, but it's traffic calming. So they're saying like here you see how you have the trees between the sidewalk and the road,
Mhm.
and here you don't. These trees are a complete street element because they make structure and kind of go. So they were saying that it would be good to have them between the sidewalk and the road here too.
And I think the reason for including them on the other lot was shielding from the other neighbors, and the reason for, minimizing down below was for visibility from State Street and for visibility of us to the Recon building across the street. That being said, we've shown you that we can compromise if we need some trees, and we can compromise on what that looks like. I'm not afraid of planting trees.
Yeah. The reason that they work, like I said, is they're actually a vertical, like they interrupt the vertical view of the drivers, so they will tend to slow down. Whereas if you have them farther back from the street, it looks more wide open and they tend to drive faster. So,
That's on Amherst you're talking?
no, they
There
thought
you
the
go.
Amherst trees were fine, and Complete Streets are just looking at basically like the visual impact of the road. But they were actually they loved this because this is like a complete street profile.
Mm-hmm.
You have the grass, the sidewalk, the street tree, the shoulder, the road. That's
So you're
like-
saying pulling those three at the upper lot closer
they
to
didn't
the
understand
road?
why they weren't down here because they think that the traffic will speed up. This is more open.
Mhm.
You have
Mhm.
driveways and things here, so without the trees here, it's gonna look open and you're gonna have more speed.
So you're not suggesting another set of trees. You're saying the three that are there, move them below.
Yeah, they thought they would be better closer to the road.
Yeah,
They
I
didn't
don't
understand
think
why
that's
they
a
were.
problem. I just think we were trying to limit the number of trees that we put down there for visibility. I think if we took those three and moved them and didn't add another three in between them to create,
Yeah, they think the trees would be more effective closer to the road.
and if our engineer has no reason to push back, that's fine.
And the other reason it's good to have them down by the sidewalk is they shade people walking on it,
Okay.
which is better
Yeah,
when it
that makes
gets
sense.
super hot.
With the upgrades, the Kia's, is it mandatory that you have to renovate the building?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, so when you acquire a dealership as part of the buy-sell, you agree to make it image compliant is what they call it. And Kia's been very reasonable with us. Their level of requirements, we cannot get to on this property. We're getting to the minimum specifications that we can get to with Kia.
With waivers, right?
Pardon me?
With waivers, right?
Yeah.
But is there the potential that this building would be renovated without any major renovations to the parking lots?
Because of the expansion in the back and because of the parking that I'm already losing,
Mhm.
it becomes the wrong site to operate out of. And therefore, if we can't do it financially, Kia says, then you need to relocate and go find another property.
I think that's an important point.
Mhm.
We are a community that does not have a ton of commercial opportunity. So I think we do need to be considerate of the residential property. I think we need to weigh that with the fact that they're not coming in and asking to build a new dealership. It's pre-existing.
Mhm.
And there are not that many opportunities for us to maintain that
Mhm.
commercial liability.
Oh yeah, and Devin did say that he's actually gonna pull the plan that has some of the, the landscaping beds and stuff across the street to make this whole entrance look nicer again.
On both sides.
Yeah, we had that in the original one. When he redid this one with the new configuration, he did not include that.
Right.
I mean, it's a separate parcel, but we're not going to make the upper area look beautiful and leave the lower area separate. That's a different conversation. But he did show the landscaping piece. And by that, I mean, the building down there needs to be painted and it's going to match the building up top to look nice.
All right. I think we're at a good takeaway point here.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
So May 19th will be when we make the resolution, when you make the resolution for the public hearing. Correct? And that will be for the overall site plan, current project. Was there also going to be a recommendation possibly at that date made to the ZBA? I don't know where we ended. Okay. So that May 19th meeting, we'll have a lot more clarity as to where we're going.
The 25
33.
33 will have the ZBA recommendation on the 3 questions that we ask on the suitability, the effect on the comprehensive plan, and the recommendation to the ZBA. That then goes through planning department to get onto the agenda for the upcoming month. And then our public hearing will be specifically on this one.
Okay.
From there, we will then come to a consensus on what the vote will be for the recommendation for the special use permit. So we're
A lot of
keeping them
moving
in-
parts. Yeah,
in
no, I
lockstep.
appreciate
know
it, and I
it's-
appreciate your patience with me.
Yeah.
Just, all I would ask is if there is something that you need from us. I was a little surprised last time by what I thought I knew and I didn't know. I'm an open book. Please tell me where I'm at and what I can do to overcome any of the concerns of the board.
Laura, I'm wondering if we could task Clark with putting together one of those charts that we've done on some of the applications that shows the step-by-step, like the timeline things.
Oh,
Would he
yeah.
be able to do 2 of them and put them together?
We could try. He and
Yeah.
I have actually even batted it around a little bit just to try and get it going in our own heads.
Mhm.
We can work on it again. There are so many different referrals and stuff. It's hard to put it in one place, but I think
Yeah.
we can. We can try.
Even if it was the bulleted, color-coded ones that he's done previously that show the multi-steps, you have a very unique
Sounds like.
project.
Yeah,
And we've done this before. It helps the board. It also shows you the timeline as they could move through, or there's little caveats in there. If stuff has to get a referral. It's really a helpful document. So
It would be. And
I
I've
think
done
for the
20 of these projects. First time I'm trying to figure out what the next step is. So
Yeah.
that would be fantastic.
all right, and this is one of our better breaks between the meetings. I think we have time to do that, and it would
Okay.
be beneficial.
Really
And then
appreciate that.
We
Thank
should
you.
also share that aerial map that we have of the commercial district outline.
I can send it to them as soon as I send it to you.
That works. Thank you.
Just to confirm, the public hearing date hasn't been determined yet.
We have to call for one
On the
at
19th.
the May 19th meeting.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
you don't need a resolution to call for a public hearing for site plan and special use permit. You do need a resolution to call for a public hearing for subdivision. But you certainly can always use a resolution as a tool. So I'm not,
So Laura, are you suggesting by that comment that we actually make a decision to call for a public hearing now?
I don't mean to be overly complicating. I just want to make sure that you guys know
I
that you
second
can actually buy just a verbal vote. Call
Yeah.
for, the reason that we have to do a resolution to call for a public hearing for subdivision is by New York State code.
Code, yeah.
We have to do the secret determination when we call for the public hearing. We do not do secret determinations for site plan and special use permit until they're actually granted because we can. And we like to have a
Yeah.
better handle on the environmental.
Yeah, so I would feel one person's voice and then I'll stop. I would feel more comfortable using what Laura said and at our next meeting, have the public hearing, meaning we're calling for it by vote today. And then subsequent to that public hearing in the agenda, we have the discussion on the second application, lot line adjustment, making recommendations to the ZBA.
So is 2 weeks enough time to call for? Yep. That's not, as a lead, I would like to ask show of hands who would be in favor of making the vote on the public hearing at this meeting.
I'm in favor.
I am too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So-
Yeah. Alex raised his hand too.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, and I also think the other benefit to that is we only have one meeting in June, and there's
Right.
actually a really long time
That's what
between
I
the
was
June
looking at
meeting
the
and the
schedule.
July. So that would allow us to get a big piece of it done, and then we could maybe do our full recommendation in
Good.
June.
Right.
It was one negative.
There was one negative. Well, that was the vote to vote. Should we vote
Yeah, we should vote.
or is it good enough for us to have a majority?
I think we
on
should
it?
vote formally.
You can
This should
vote.
probably be. a
You want to
formal
vote formally? That's fine. Yep.
So who's in favor
Call
of?
the roll.
Well-
Are you doing a yay, nay, or are you doing the roll?
So let's make a motion and then we can do it, right? So
Mhm.
you're making a motion.
I move to vote yea or nay to have a public hearing on the 19th of May.
I second that.
Okay. All in favor of having the public hearing on May 19th, state by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? One
One
opposition.
opposed.
Okay. So we'll schedule the public hearing for the 19th for the special use permit. And in conjunction with that, there will be the ZBA recommendation on the other application.
That's fantastic.
19th.
I think given the complexity of this, more time is better.
Yeah.
For all of us to know. I'd like to know what the public thinks so that we can adjust.
All right.
Thank you.
Is
Thanks,
that
everyone.
both bullets
Thanks,
or do we have
Chris.
another bullet?
That's the last
That's both.
discussion item.
Okay.
That's
Anyway.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes up discussion items. We'll move on to reports.
The only report I have is a follow-up on the short-term rental implementation. As I said before, the letters were sent out in early April. The compliance date was April 30th. We have 2 applications to maintain short-term rentals. We are preparing 6 notice and orders for non-responders, and we'll just keep moving forward with it.
Non-responders to our request to
Mhm.
apply.
Do you have any idea, Laura, if that's a common tactic to just ignore it?
I would say, we send out kind of blanket like enforcement letters. And I would say it's a higher than normal response rate to what we normally send out, but it is fairly normal for people to ignore the mail from the town. And, we do get more compliance when a building inspector starts taping on the door, the certified
Mhm.
mail and stuff like that. So the majority of short-term rentals in our town are at the point now where they're going to get a notice by a building inspector. So,
Did you share the quantity?
so we did 8. We found 8
8.
when we're looking through all the sites. There is one that is in the CH zone and, appears to be compliant for an unhosted rental. And the remaining were in the residential zones and, have to go through the process of getting registered.
And our code was CH, not CN, just CH.
CN.
Yeah,
What did I say?
CN.
Did I say CN?
You said CH just now, but the code was C.
No, I meant to say CN.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
They're similar. right? Yeah,
My
it's just
my
CN.
brain's still on State Street.
That's
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. Thanks for that update, Laura.
And just, would I do this under reports or commission business, the Safe 7? Safe
I
on
would
7?
do it under report.
Do it under
Yeah.
reports. So Laura and I were here for this Safe on 7 with Labella and I don't remember the acronym, Capital Region Planning Commission.
You can just call them the Transportation Council.
The Transportation Council, and actually walked through their public presentation of what they're looking to show in terms of traffic and rate of injury. I think at one point it's like 12 times the state average, looking at density and speed. It was good. I have to say the Complete Streets crew is fantastic and had really good recommendations. Police chief was there as well, and we were able to kind of help guide them in terms of making the presentation very clear to people who'll be looking at it possibly for the first time, right? So there's a lot of information, but it wasn't really they were not guiding the survey participant through it, I think, as clearly as they needed to.
Was this presentation based on data collected already? All that research has been done?
Yeah, it's existing conditions. It's
Mhm.
actually an incredible amount of data, but
Yeah.
lane width,
Really
speeds,
We
nitty-gritty.
drive over, we
volume.
drive over to speed bars every day.
Yeah, we drive, so they're
Yes.
capturing. They're capturing
Those
the
are
rate
out
of-
there for that study.
So the volume, the rate of speed,
Yeah.
all of those things. What, who turns off and on,
Mhm.
all that data
Mhm.
is on there.
And they're gonna then, it will be the process, I think they're gonna try to use Niska Day
Mhm.
as one of the opportunities
Mhm.
to start getting out and talking about it. And hopefully we'll be able to share this. I'd like to be able to share it also with members of all the boards, because I think if we share it with our own networks, that's a really good way for us to get people to engage and take the survey.
So the goal of that is to get people to take the survey.
Mhm.
Okay,
And get
gotcha.
public input.
And
It's a very good education walking through it though.
And it starts you thinking, oh, that's maybe why I see that. What could we do to help? So right now we're doing existing conditions and collecting public input. Then they're actually going to come up with concept designs and then push that out for public comment and really try to build consensus over what treatments we can do on Route 7 to make it safer.
But Ellis Hospital, the Bellevue folks were there, DOT was there. It was a very good representation of all related parties, I think, providing input.
Are the commuters who use that road being included at all?
Yeah, they are.
Remind me is that a town road?
State.
It is a state road. So we're just doing information gathering and for the purpose of presenting something to the state at some point.
So if you look at accident rates across the entire state, I mean, Route 7's high, but there are probably other priorities for the state. For
Okay.
the town of Niskayuna,
It's number one.
it's number one. I mean, there are other things that we work at, but we just have so much problems with that road that even though the state does try to help and supports all the time, we end up pushing that and we end up doing the grant applications because it's more important to us than them, even though we actually have no control over that road. So they will support. And then if we get the grants, I think a lot of times they will even implement. But we have been the driving force, I think, because even on Route 7, there's a slightly more dangerous spot on Route 7 in Troy than in Niskayuna, but it's just so high for us.
On Hoosick Street, like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where they have a slightly higher accident rate right there.
Yeah, it's not residential.
No.
It's commercial
No,
in
our
Troy.
corridor is so different from
Right,
the
it's
other
so
places that
that's-
you look at.
Yeah.
Right,
part
and
of
it's
it.
really interesting to learn that that road at the time it was expanded was built in a way that the DOT says they would not build it
They
now.
wouldn't build it like
The middle turn lane wouldn't be there, yeah.
And the curves, it's built, I mean, you pick up speed, it's hard. You have to really, like, I'm so much more conscious now of how I drive it, and you have to really work to keep yourself
Yep.
at the
Oh,
speed limit.
I put my cruise control.
Yeah, I know, folks.
There is just
So
no way
The most
I-
common answer I get from people I talk to is I put cruise control on.
It
Yeah.
used to be concrete road. It had
Concrete
bum,
median.
bum, 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 bum.
Oh,
And
concrete
It
road.
had a lot of like natural obstacles for traffic calming,
Well,
I think.
Expansion joints were in the road.
Yeah, expansion.
and for a while, we had raised beds between lanes.
That's right.
And I think that was probably the worst configuration ever because it impeded plowing, it impeded really your sight lines, you couldn't see. And there was a lot of building activity going on, residential neighborhoods being added. And it got worse every time a new street went in to intersect with it. And I remember being terrified of Troy Road when I was a kid.
It was surprising the number of daily trips that's on that road compared to some of the other major arterials. Exceeds 25,000 daily trips. on that
Nobody
road.
thinks of it being like Wolf Road or
It's
being like
closest to Wolf Road.
Wolf
Closest
Road.
to Wolf
It's
Road.
the next, I mean, not our end, but the road in the mind of the shopper is the destination to go. All those new auto dealerships have been built
Mhm.
on the other end, not in Latham's side, but yeah, that's the way to go. I don't know what would be, I mean, what would be, in Laura, in your opinion, and maybe Sarah, what would be the alternative? Is it a speed reduction? What's the goal other than safety? But are there
You have
alternatives?
to make, you're going to have to make structural changes to that road.
Structural changes?
Because a speed reduction, a speed limit, without structural changes to the road just becomes an enforcement nightmare.
Right, yeah.
It's actually already, I mean, if you look at how much time our police spend
They're a
on
lot.
Route 7,
Yeah.
I know 12:30 in the afternoon, 5
Yeah.
between.
oh yeah. I mean, and
Five
you see, you guys
past
drive that road, they've got somebody pulled over all the time.
Mhm.
And they're still out there and the speeds are still very high. You actually have to structurally change that road to
What do you
naturally.
envision that to be though? Would it be?
There's all kinds of ways that you can do it. And they're gonna model them, because the other thing you have to make sure is that you're not pushing traffic onto Rosendale and
Right.
into the neighborhood. So, I mean, they've got that whole spread and they're good at doing that, modeling it. They also have other roads that have gotten treatments. And then, you know, another thing that I've been pushing very hard is some type of stoplight
at some
intersection
point?
area at Bellevue, because
That's all, yeah.
you're like 1,500 feet to the nearest sidewalk, something like that,
Yeah, but you
or
gotta
to the
go
nearest
all the way
crosswalk
from Bellevue up to St. David's Lane
to cross,
to cross.
which we think actually some people do when they're taking the bus based on the bus riding data. So people are actually
Huh.
Yeah, they walk. Same in the
walking
morning.
Yeah.
from St. David to Bellevue because they won't cross Route 7.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Smart people.
Mhm.
smart. But it's a lot of extra walking, and if it was a day like today,
Yeah,
No
you're
good.
right. You're right.
Well, one of the things I noticed in the winter that is very scary because of the snow. They
Yeah.
are walking in the street.
we talked about that
Oh, yeah.
actually.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that's right.
Someone's like it scared me because they were wearing like a gray coat and I did not see them until they picked their face up.
Mhm.
So it's just it's not good all around.
It's always good to run a see and be seen campaign when you're talking about road safety too. So scary when people aren't wearing like high vis.
Yeah.
So scary.
I mean, since we're talking about, let me just ask a quick question. About how many miles of roads are there in Niskayuna? Is it 100 or 200?
88.1 center line miles in Niskayuna. I
88.1.
had to answer that question this morning.
So, okay, good. So I'm going to round that to 100.
All
So,
roads in town?
Chips. So town roads that are.
so in all honesty,
Not the
to put in walking/biking lanes on 100 miles of road, $50,000 a mile is probably a high estimate. So we're talking something potentially that's a $5+ million effort.
Well, it's probably more than that.
I mean, 10.
For heavy highway, a lot more.
If we were
Right.
to redo the entirety of Route 7, yeah, it's up there.
Well, I was thinking of actually the whole town.
Oh, the whole town.
Yeah. It's something we can put in a parking lot for later discussion, but I think we should really make a serious assessment of whatever bond we need to raise or whatever else it might be to actually make this town walkably connected
Mhm.
and safe
Actually,
for
Complete Streets
pedestrians.
works on that all the time. We have our ADA transition plan and our Complete Streets plan
Yeah,
where we identify gaps and things like that.
I know. So like, is there a price tag that's ever been determined?
Yes, for adding sidewalks, yeah, there's a linear foot price that DOT uses that we use a lot.
So, but do we know what a total would be if we wanted to do all roads in the town, or let's all practice?
Don't know, but it would be way more than $10 million.
But there's also a problem in that in some parts of town, there really isn't the room to do that without significantly devaluing the homes.
Yeah, agreed.
You
And we
have to
can
take
we can do
enough
this
land.
selectively too, right? But I think working up a
Make
cost
homes-
estimate.
We can. There is a way to do that. And if you talk to Bill Chapman, he's the leader of the Complete Streets Committee, and get him going on it, I'm sure you can get the Complete Streets Committee going on that. It's an interesting idea. And we have part of it sort of done with the ADA transition.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking about it to be just a futile exercise that we put on the shelf, but if we are dealing with a quote unquote, the school district just did what? They just got through renovation on what, a $26 million effort? Was it 20 or was it 26 or 60?
For the
For the big last set of renovations that they went through. It was more like 26, right?
similar something around there.
So, I mean, this town has demonstrated that we could raise
Well, the-
significant monies for significant safety, connectivity, service to pedestrians, right? And at the end of the day, man, maybe all these walkable paths and bike paths just probably all need to end up on the main bike path,
Yeah.
right? So we don't need to maybe cover every single
But
road.
would that help 7? That's not a town road, right?
No, it's a town. It's a state. So the town actually, we can get permission to work with the state, but really, and always ends up being a state project on a state road.
The state did put in some sidewalks.
Yeah, they did. When you look at retrofitting suburban communities for complete streets, there's a lot of different tools in the toolbox. One of the really big ones is the planning board. And one of the really important reasons we have tenant changes and stuff is to start picking away at these retrofits, even when they're hard and maybe outsized to the tenant change. But that's a big tool. And new construction, I mean, forget about it. Like, we should just be having
Yeah.
sidewalks and, that's the easy one. The retrofits are the harder ones. The ADA transition plan is a federal requirement. So that's where a lot of the funds go first. And then building those connections. The town board really has been trying to fund them. I don't know if anybody's been down to, Plum Street, that in front of Hillside. That was entirely funded by the town board for the first time ever. It was a town board installed sidewalk. And then they just did Palmer for ADA transition. And so there's both brand new sidewalk connections. So they definitely work away on it. But you want to take a guess on how much either of those cost? And they're very, very short sections.
Yeah.
They're very pricey.
And
Yeah.
they're pricey.
There are some areas that need them.
Yeah,
And
for
there are
sure.
Some areas that really don't need it. Like, I live on the dog walkers highway on Rowell Road. And as much as I appreciate your comment, and I do,
Mhm.
I think people on the street, you cannot apply this like peanut butter. People
Yeah.
walking on that street is traffic calming. But not on Route 7. People walking on Route
Yeah.
7 are gonna get killed, right? So,
But also, so come walking in your neighborhood a couple of times. People walking in that area, St. Anne,
yeah,
right, Rose Hill. Oh my God, it's scary.
yeah.
Super
I mean,
scary.
I do it all the time, but yeah, I am counting on my
Yeah.
on my
Anyway.
friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be such a big undertaking, but it's such a character. It's a character of our
I mean,
town, too.
Part of the Route 7 thing, was there a consideration of that the CDTA buses that cause people to cross
Yeah,
the streets,
CDTA
that maybe
said
they can actually drive on to Bellevue, right?
Yeah, we do talk about that. That's very difficult for them, especially because they have low ridership and it takes them much time. If we had way more ridership, I think maybe something that they consider, and they do talk about like partnering with Bellevue and things. But CDTA has been a great partner, and if we do get some grants, they will put their own funding to do crosswalks and safe crossings between their bus stops. That's probably more reasonable than them pulling off. They just won't it's hard enough for them to even service Niskayuna. I think half the time they just want to pull the routes. So it's something that we need to do in our town to encourage more transit, because transit is like a really good way to move people.
Yeah, or giving people better access to
Yeah.
transit through more
Yeah.
sidewalks or bike paths or.
Well, and it's hard too, because we talk about this, and I know we all want to leave, but when you do pedestrian counts and bicycle counts on Route 7, it doesn't even show the demand for a sidewalk, but that's because people are so afraid to cross it. You look at the transit counts, like we have such incredibly low ridership, but you can't get from one side of the road to the other. So one of the things that, it may be incremental. When you start building that infrastructure, then you get the higher ridership, then you can work on more things. But Bellevue and CDTA have been great partners. They write letters, they come to our meetings, they're willing to consider all kinds of different ways to make Niskayuna better. So
Is it more like, the chicken or the egg? Because I have ridden the bus and it is the worst. And I've lived in Suffolk County, Long Island, where there's barely any transit, and that's probably for intentional reasons. But like to get from like Van Antwerp to, to like down 7 was like an hour and a half ride.
yeah, so we don't have a system that has like to get from Van Antwerp to Route 7. You go into Schenectady and you
Yes.
transfer a bus, and then you come back out on Route 7. Yeah, it's CDTA. They talk to me about that. I mean, they know what that issue is, but again,
It's ridership.
ridership in suburban communities, it doesn't drive.
I don't know, like I just feel like, and that's what I'm saying with Suffolk County. That's where I grew up. That's how it was. But at some point, it's like someone has to give on increasing
It
accessibility.
is a chicken or the egg
Yes,
thing. Yeah, it's
so-
true. Yeah, CDTA is very open to that kind of stuff, but
I wish state DOT were open to putting sidewalks in for North Balltown. Because there are people walking it.
Oh, yeah.
We got kids crossing.
See, you
To
guys.
get to Craig School, to get to the soccer fields,
Yeah.
I don't let my kids.
or to go the opposite over to the
right.
JCC.
We're all secret
Good
Complete Streets
discussion.
members.
I'm going to keep this moving along. So any more commission business from any other planning board members?
Just one quick thing.
Sure.
Leslie's earlier question about Matthews Hyundai. I think we should ask the question, not from the applicant, obviously, maybe police or someone. Where did they drop off their cars?
Yeah,
It's
we
probably
can-
worth knowing.
Clark and we looked at their site plan once. They have a slightly more open site plan, so
Yeah, yeah,
maybe they can pull.
Maybe they do, but I think it's
Yeah, I'm
probably
not
worth
sure
getting a
though.
solid
Yeah.
answer.
I
If we're-
wouldn't want to draw a parallel.
No, it's no parallel,
Yes.
completely unrelated, but it's just that the question came up and I think it's a valid one.
For the other dealership.
Yeah, but then how do you get them?
No, the issue is the
you
lay of the
let
land.
People drive them
That's
over.
the issue. So I wouldn't want to bring up and confuse the audience. It's the crest of the hill where the Matthews dealership is. That's,
Mhm.
to me, that's the big
Yeah.
issue.
I will tell you, dealerships make some unexpected arrangements. My dealerships in Latham, their new cars are delivered to their sister store in Mechanicville.
Yeah.
That may be changing, but that's the way they've been doing it for years. Because they don't have the room for the carrier, and apparently the troopers yelled at them for unloading from the street.
Any updates on I forgot the name of the project, but the townhouses next to CVS?
Clark reached out to them a month or two ago, and they're actually looking at breaking ground in the spring of 2026.
Thanks.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved, Chairman.
Okay,
Move and
motion by Ms.
seconded.
Gold, second by Mr. Plum. All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 9:13 PM. Thank you.
I have a question on that.